Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today I'm going to explain the topic that is semi-synthetic dyes. Means they are synthetic as well as one of their part belongs to some sort of a natural molecule, some sort of a natural compound, some sort of a natural entity. Mean it's a combination of natural and synthetic chemicals. You may call it synthetic compounds. Such dyes will be called as semi-synthetic dyes. The dyes which have discussed before, like used to prepare azo dyes, I used to start any sort of an amine. It can be an aromatic like single benzene, or it could be somebody having two benzene rings. That the case was like H acid, J acid, K acid. Those acids have sort of a phenolic type, having two benzene rings in the structure, not phenolic actually. So then what we used to do, we used to perform diazotization, keeping temperature 0 to 5 degree. We used to use sodium nitrite, and then we used to put in HCl as well, So what used to happen, we used to produce the corresponding diazonium salts, we used to produce those. What is diazotization? I have given a comprehensive lecture only on diazotization that is available on YouTube. You can go through that one. Then preparation of azo dyes, a comprehensive lecture has also been delivered. A video lecture is also available on YouTube. You may visit that as well. So once you go for diazotization, then you bring in some sort of a coupler that should carry benzene ring as well, some sort of a compound, having any sort of substituents. Those could be electron donating or withdrawing. Similarly, this could be somebody having one benzene ring or somebody having two benzene rings. So then they used to undergo sort of coupling, that basically is an electrophilic substitution reaction at aromatic rings, that gives us this type of compounds, which are supposed to be called as azo colorants, because at the moment this body is supposed to be sort of an organic entity. It's not a salt yet. Then one could do, you can produce some sort of an you can generate some sort of a salt from the compound. How you could do that? Let's say if you have a substituent over here, if that's a sort of an hydroxyl group, okay, so you can convert that into corresponding salt, or you have an amine over here, so then you can generate corresponding salts. Once it is converted into a salt, that will become a dye, an azo dye, in fact, that will become an azo dye. So this is a brief intro. So what is happening here, we take a synthetic compound, we use to do diazotization using certain synthetic compounds. Then we bring in another synthetic compounds as a coupler. We receive this an azo colorant. Again, we do some sort of basic reactions for the preparation of salts. So finally we get an azo dye what is happening? All chemicals which are involved at each step, they are synthetics. They are mostly, they have a carcinogenic in nature. They're hazardous chemicals, you know. So as we have an idea, the textile industry utilizes dyes on a scale of at least tons of kgs on annum scale, per annum. So that is why such synthetic chemicals, they are posing some serious ecotoxicological environmental issues. From the last few decades, people have realized the involvement of those hazardous synthetic chemicals for the preparation of dyes. So they have raised their voices against the preparation of synthetic dyes. People have proposed that why not to go for an alternative, alternative dyes. Those could be the natural dyes. The people can extract those dyes from natural reservoirs like plants especially, and those natural plant based colorants could be used as colorants and dyes in textiles. So they demanded to use them as an alternative, an eco-friendly alternative of these synthetic dyes. So the availability of natural dyes, especially in plant-based natural dyes, that has become a sort of a difficult to cater the demands of the textile industry. Textile industry requires millions of tons of dyes around the globe, around the world. Every big country like China, India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, they are heavily involved in the import of the uh, textile dyes, and then subsequent export of the dyed material. So natural sources available are not enough to cater those requirements. So what has happened then? People said, okay, what is the alternative option is there as well. We can take certain bioactive, certain compounds which are of plant origin, then we can use them, we can do some reaction on those plants based materials to convert them into dyes. As the starting materials are the couplers, belong to the natural resources, belong to the plant based reservoirs. So that is why such dyes are supposed to be called as semi synthetic dyes. Means either your starting material, it can come from the plants, then you can bring in the coupler that could be synthetic, because all compounds cannot be received from plants, as their amount is required in a bit higher quantities. So that is why, let's say, some of the components has been taken from plants. It actually undergoes few of the synthetic steps. Then you can bring in the coupler that can be the synthetic ones. Okay, undergoes the subsequent step. The final dye will be a dye which carries one part from the plant origin and the half of the part from the synthetic origin. Now this colorant, this dye, which carries one part from plant, one from the synthetic industrial origin, that will be called as semi-synthetic dye, because this material which has been received from plant, it has not been synthesized in industry. So you have reduced the production of this body, because its production would have taken the usage of few chemicals, usage of energy as well. So that's why once you are taking this compound from the plant and this compound from the industry, Then you can combine them to get the dyes. Those dyes will be synthetics. Or the other way around could be you can start with some synthetic chemical. Let's say this is synthetic. We perform diazotization. Subsequent, we generate diazonium salts. Then we want to bring in some sort of a coupler. That coupler could be from the plant origin. Yes, you can bring in some sort of phenol, flavonoids. It could be from plant origin. So plant-based origin could be bring in plant-based materials could be bring in as coupler. So once they do undergo coupling, again we will receive some sort of a dye material, that says very specifically an azo dye. Over here again, one part will be from the synthetic area, the other part of the dye will be from the plant region. That dye will be called as synthetic dye, semi-synthetic. So this is how I'm trying to give you an idea about the basics about the semi-synthetic dyes. Mean they're half synthetic, half uh, of the industrial origin, and the half of the part is from the plant origin. So this is how they are called semi-synthetic dyes. Now the question arises, why we need semi-synthetic dyes. There are two main reasons for the preparation of semi-synthetic dyes. Number one is ecotoxicity of synthetic dyes. As I've told you, the synthetic dyes are used on a very high scale around the globe on annual basis. So as their usage is very high, we have an idea that dyes, when they are applied in textile industries, they won't get fixed 100% on the fabric on textile materials. Most of the dyes are removed as effluents with the wastewater, and they move from the industry into the open air, into the open water. This is how they have posed serious threats of contaminating the groundwater. They move from the industry into the surrounding environment. They do contaminate the surrounding soil, so they pose serious threats for the production of field crops there. So if this keeps on happening for decades and decades, so their usage has created toxicity of the environment. They have become toxins, they have become pollutants for the environment. That is called toxicity of the synthetic dyes. So with the passage of time, as I've told you, the people have become aware of the toxicity of the synthetic dyes due to the involvement of the toxic materials. Now we want to replace them with the natural ones, okay? Want to replace them with the natural dyes, especially from plants. Okay, but I've told you we can receive dye from plants, especially like one can have an idea about the turmeric. We can get a colorant that is called coumarin from the turmeric, and that compound has a very specific color, and it is acting as a natural dye as well. Similarly, many other plants have different types of colorants available in them, so we can use them as natural dyes. But what is the problem? The problem is that the plant can't give us that high amount of dyes, so we can't use natural dyes only. So what people did then, they received few compounds from the plants, We call them natural molecules, natural compounds, okay, and then they reacted them with some synthetic chemicals. We reacted them with some synthetic chemicals, and as a whole they produce semi-synthetic dyes. Synthetic chemicals have been reacted with those natural chemicals, and as a result we get dyes. Those are called semi-synthetic dyes. So that's the first concept, that is why we need to go for semi-synthetic dyes. Number second is bioactivity of dyes. We want to induce an inherent, bioactivity in our synthetic dyes. For that very purpose, we use some bioactive molecules, as in one of the my previous lecture, that is on functional dyes. I think I've used benzimidazole as bioactive components, as bioactive molecules, and react them with other molecules to generate a bigger dyes. And due to the presence of those benzimidazole, that dye molecule becomes bioactive, means that is also a dye. It can give color to the textile material, as well as the benzimidazole can act as antibacterial, antifungal agent as well. So it is doing double job. It is imparting color to the textile materials. Secondly, it is acting as antibacterial in nature. So we use such dyes for medical textiles, where we want to keep the textile materials or the the clothes of the doctors and the paramedics, that is supposed to be sterilized, that is supposed to be free of germs, So such dyes are applied on textile material that is required for the medical purposes, So once we want to generate bioactive dyes, we have an idea, the plant-based compounds. Plant-based compounds, they are generally bioactive. So once we extract a compound from any plant, let's say we extract coumarin from the turmeric, that could be used as a coupler for the preparation of dye. At the same time, that compound like coumarin has an inherent ability of antioxidants, antifungal and antibacterial in nature. So once we react it with some synthetic chemical and we prepare a semi-synthetic dye, that dye will automatically be an bioactive as well. So semi-synthetic dyes, preparing from some bioactive components received from plants, they will automatically give us some bioactive semi-synthetic dyes. So semi-synthetic dyes are prepared for two purposes. Number one is in order to reduce the ecotoxicity of synthetic dyes. Once the dye carries one natural component, that natural component will not be hazardous for the environment. Okay, so that the dye will become eco-friendly. Secondly, the dyes where one of the component has been received from plants, and most of the plants based compounds are supposed to be bioactive in nature, so that dye will automatically become a bioactive one. So this is all about the basics of semi-synthetic dyes, why we need semi-synthetic dyes. This has been explained. Now we'll give you one or two examples from the literature where people have received compounds from the plants and has converted them into some sort of, uh, some sort of semi-synthetic dye. So let me discuss with those so you can get a bit more clear idea about this preparation of semi-synthetic. So let me discuss few simpler examples where people have taken compound from uh, plants and use them um, for the preparation of synthetic dyes. Few examples where people have used, like this is the example of one of the molecule. This compound, which is called as syringic acid, it is an unnatural compound and has been used for the preparation of a number of natural dyes. What the people have brought in, they have used it as I think as a coupler, because what they did actually, they took simply aniline, they performed its diazotization. Okay, we have an idea about the chemicals, we have an idea about the reaction conditions. So what would have has happened? They would have generated a sort of a diazonium salt, like this one, or to write a bit more clear way you can understand, people can understand, So you would have got this sort of diazonium, then this syringic acid, which has been received from plants, it's a plant origin, has been used as coupler. So what would happen, we have an idea, it's some sort of OCH3, it's an ortho directing, so this is ortho, this is somebody ortho and para directing, so this is para, due to this body it's a para, due to this body it's a meta, and this is an electron withdrawing, so it has the ability to direct incoming this body to meta, but both of the metas are already filled. So what is available, best place is same to be this one, ortho to this one, para to this one, So it would have coupled over here, giving us this sort of the products. So this is the dye, this is the compound which has been generated, I can write it again a bit better way so you can understand. So as we have an idea, this body belongs to the plant origin, whereas this component has come from the synthetic origin. So it's a sort of a colorant at the moment. What we need to convert it into the salt. We have two options. Carboxylic acid, it's a phenolic entity. Both can be converted into their corresponding salts. So if we bring in any sort of base, sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, we can generate salt over here, we can generate salt over here. So once this salt is generated, it would have become a semi-synthetic dye. So this is what has already been produced. People, my friends, colleagues belong to India. They have prepared this dye using natural sources, and this was published back in 2017. What they did next was they produced this one. In another example again, what they did, they took this synergic acid again. They took synergic acid again, and this time they took para-nitroaniline, para-nitroaniline. They performed diazotization, produced diazonium salt out of this, and then again they performed coupling, so they would have generated this sort of a colorant. Again, they would have produced the corresponding salt like this. So it's a semi-synthetic dye number 2. Okay. What is happening over there? The coupler is the same. The coupler, that is syringic acid, it is acting as a coupler, and it is natural. It's a plant based. What is happening? They are using it as a coupler. They are bringing it some sort of a diazonium salts. So it's a dye number 2 which has been generated from it. Same concept they do applied again. They bring in another natural compound that is called apicacetan. Called an apicacetan, Next time they bring in another compound that is called apicacetan, This compound is of really great medicinal importance, We have an idea it carries benzene rings, it carries ketonic functionality, as well as it carries chirality as well. So the one bond has been represented in dotted form, the other bond has been represented as bold form. So you have an idea what is meant by a bold bond and what is meant by the dotted bond. Mean there is a chirality there, isomerism is involved in the compound. So that compound is of high biological importance, So what they did again, they took aniline, performed diazotization to get diazonium salt, as we have already discussed, and then they use this apicacetan as a coupler. So what would happen? The nitrogen would have reacted at this carbon, because this bud is orthodirecting, this bud is para-directing. So in both cases, this carbon is the best for the attack of the diazonium salt. This was a resultant semi-synthetic colorant at the moment. So as we have an idea, it carries so many phenolics components. So what we could do, we can bring in any sort of base to generate salt of the compound, then it will become a dye, and basically as it carries one of the component that is from the plant paste, so it will be called as a semi-synthetic dye, you know. So this is another example. The people have already produced and published it, you know. So it's an example of a semi-synthetic dye. Again, in another example, they started off again keeping apicacetan as a starting material. Again, they utilized para-nitroaniline. It's an amine, you know. So we have an idea amines could be converted into diazonium salts. And then again this diazonium could be reacted with this apicacetan, keeping apicacetan as a coupler, you know. So again this body directs the incoming electrophile at ortho, and this body is also ortho and para director. So para to this one, ortho to this one, so better to direct this body, this electrophile at this position. So we will have a resulting colorant, azocolorant, you know, bioactive azocolorant, because it carries one of the coupler, one of the part which belongs to plants. It has been received, it has been retrieved from plants, you know. So again you can convert it to any corresponding salt by reacting with some base. So once it is converted into salt, you know, it will become a dye. So it will be a semi-synthetic dye. So these are the few of the examples which are known in literature as semi-synthetic dyes, you know. So what is the concept behind the semi-synthetic dyes, how they are produced, I've just given to you as an example here. Secondly, why we need semi-synthetic dyes, I've given you a background as well. What are the options available for you? I've given you few examples as well. In one of my next lecture, I will also discuss few other compounds of natural origin that can be used for the preparation of semi-synthetic dyes, or I will also explain the preparation of total synthesis of natural dyes. You know, you can synthesize, derivatize actually natural compounds. You can perform simpler reaction on natural compounds and convert them into some sort of dyes, and those dyes will preferably be the total synthesis of natural dyes. I will discuss inshallah in my next lecture. So that's all about the semi-synthetic dyes, the idea behind it, how they can be prepared, how people have prepared. So if you have any question, please do come up without any hesitation. Put your question in comment area, or you may approach me through WhatsApp. I would be happy to respond at the earliest convenience inshallah. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Assalamu alaikum.